So, in the past few days, there's been all kinds of speculation about the Trump Netanyahu administration's relationships and whether there's been certain stresses on the relationship, whether there's questions around is America, maybe distancing itself, or there's been some kind of hostility. And some people have been saying these sources are people saying that are nonsense and ties are excellent. And I'm not an insider that's in the room knowing what's going on here. It may well be nonsense, it may not be. But I want to unpack what we know so far about the situation and to consider the implications. So, Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, has insisted ties with Trump are excellent amid reports of growing rifts. And there are people in the Trump administration that are saying, no, these reports are nonsense, it's rubbish, it's a waste of time. Let me tell you what the Times of Israel have reported. They're saying Prime Minister Netanyahu on Sunday rejected reports of widening gaps between him and US President Donald Trump, said that his relationship with the president was excellent in a video update on his X account. The reports came ahead of Trump's trip to the Middle East this week, in which the president will skip Israel, but will stop in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, leading government critics to warn Israel was being left out of Washington's regional diplomatic initiatives. Quote, "What can I say? It's not Trump saying it, and it's not me saying it," Netanyahu said, when asked about sources in the media claiming there is growing tension between Washington and Jerusalem amid the war in Gaza and the US-Iran nuclear talks. It was Trump's spokesman at the White House who said, "What is this nonsense?" Netanyahu continued, referring to recent comments from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She said the relationship is excellent. I'm telling you, the relationship is excellent. He spins, most of them are born here in Israel. They're born in a certain media outlet that's trying to promote a certain candidate. And in order to promote him, they need to say Trump and Netanyahu are no longer, the premier claimed. He did not name the media outlet. "I speak to Trump from time to time," he says. "I won't say every couple of days, but every 2 to 3 weeks I talk to him. My people are in the White House, including just 2 to 3 days ago. They were there. We are currently blessed with a president and administration that is very, very friendly. And we're trying to coordinate both the big things as well as the small things," concluded Netanyahu, referring to a visit last week to the White House by Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer. US Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff added his voice to the growing chorus of officials denying any tensions between the two leaders in an interview with the right-wing Breitbart news website, which was conducted last week and published Sunday evening. "Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli people are a staunch ally of the United States, and it goes back the other way," said Witkoff. "I've been at multiple meetings with the President and the Prime Minister. They're friendly, they're good friends, in fact." He said this does not mean they see eye to eye on absolutely everything, but that the media hears about a small disagreement and conflates that into some large article about massive issues that they have. "Israel is a great partner for the United States. Strategically, economically, we think very much alike. We have very similar objectives," the US envoy said. "They don't want to see a weaponized nuclear state in the state of Iran, and so I don't think there's much daylight between how they think and how we think from a foreign policy perspective." Channel 12 reported Sunday that Witkoff recently told hostages' families that he disagreed with Israel's approach to the war in the Strip and believes that Israel is pointlessly extending the war when reaching a new ceasefire and hostage release deal is the correct next step to take. Israel is planning to launch a major military offensive against Hamas in Gaza if no hostage deal is reached with the terror group by the end of Trump's visit to the region. Channel 12 cited the families as saying they had not heard this kind of criticism of Israeli government policy from Witkoff in the past. Former US Ambassador to Israel David Friedman, who served under the first Trump administration, also asserted in an X post, he said, quote, "There is no rift between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. There are those in both the US and Israel who would like to see such a rift, and they are feeding false accounts to the media to achieve just that, but it's all fake." Current US Ambassador Mike Huckabee tried to quell the rumours of tensions in interviews with Israeli networks Saturday, asserting that the US president was not snubbing Israel by skipping the Jewish state during his upcoming visit. Jerusalem is reportedly unhappy with the ongoing US-Iran talks, which are said to be developing into a largely similar framework to the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, which was signed by then US President Barack Obama and was panned at the time by Netanyahu as disastrous for Israel. Under the terms being discussed, according to reports, Iran would limit stockpile size and centrifuge types and dilute, export or seal its 60% uranium stock under unprecedented International Atomic Energy Agency scrutiny in exchange for substantial sanctions relief. This approach has not aligned with Netanyahu's long-time position, which is that Israel will not allow Iran to attain nuclear weapons and is opposed to any talks that don't lead Iran to agree to a Libya-style agreement under which Tehran's entirely nuclear program, both military and civilian, would be dismantled completely. In addition, Israel had not been made aware in advance of a recent deal signed between the US and the Houthi rebels in Yemen regarding a cessation of US bombing if the Iran-backed rebels stopped firing on US shipping, which notably left the door open for Houthi strikes on Israel to go unabated. That deal was announced by Trump 2 days after a Houthi missile impacted the grounds of Ben Gurion Airport, a few hundred yards from the main control tower, lightly injuring several people and prompting most foreign airlines to halt flights to Israel. Israel's Channel 13 reported Sunday evening that people in Netanyahu's inner circle have expressed unusually harsh criticism toward the Trump administration in recent weeks. There's chaos in the Trump administration. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, said a senior figure close to the premier, according to the report. It's not even clear if this has anything to do with us. Everything operates according to the president's whims. Sometimes that works in our favour, and sometimes it doesn't, the source said. The Premier's offices also expressed disappointment in the White House through Derma during a meeting last Thursday between the top Netanyahu advisor and Trump, the report added. In the US, Fox News also reported on the rift, citing analysts as saying Netanyahu stood as a roadblock to Trump's diplomatic initiatives in the region, adding that Israel was not part of securing the expected release of US-Israeli hostage Edan Alexander, who was kidnapped during the October 7th, 2023 Hamas-led onslaught that started the war in Gaza. Officials told the Times of Israel the move was a goodwill gesture by Hamas ahead of Trump's Middle East visit, hoping that he will coax Israel to sign a deal freeing the remaining hostages in exchange for an end to the war. It's very hard to know everything that's going on here, and, he said, she said, all that kind of stuff. One thing I think we certainly can say with certainty is that this notion that, well, Israel should just do a deal on the hostages at any price, and there's no point to continuing the war. If there is a continued threat of Hamas and a continued security threat there, and if exchanging the hostages means potentially releasing thousands of murderers back into the streets, Israel has legitimate questions and concerns and moral objections around that. So to say that objections to all this is just pointless, well, we don't know exactly what the demands are, but not necessarily. Secondly, the one comment I would have, and I said this in a discussion recently in an interview that I did with someone, I was on someone else's podcast, and they were sort of saying that the one thing that they sort of struggle with Netanyahu is that there's always a bit of a sense of just maintaining the status quo and not actually putting out a vision for what you really want to be in the future. Trump has proposed a vision, for Gaza. We're going to relocate the people of Gaza. I'm not sure why Netanyahu didn't jump on that and say, great, yeah, I support that as well. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Instead, what we have is him saying, we've got to defeat Hamas. We've got to get the hostages out. And we've got to make sure it never poses a threat to us again, Gaza. Okay, fine. But then what next? What's going to happen to the people there? Who's going to control it? And on those fronts, it seems to me that he's been quite vague. And I can imagine that frustrating the American administration. Because they're like, well, we need to know what's going to be. We need to pursue our objectives and continue to pursue them. One thing that apparently Netanyahu is quoted as saying that I strongly agree with, and I think is the third part of this, is Netanyahu is quoted as saying, I think we will need to wean ourselves off American military aid. He said this at the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. He drew a comparison between the current military aid, which amounts to 4 billion shekels, and the civilian aid he himself cancelled in the 90s. Back then I said that, alongside our economic policy, this would lead to Israel to growth. And just look at Tel Aviv's skyline today. It's also worth noting that Caroline Glick has been campaigning against the US aid for many years, and she just joined Bibi's team in February as his international affairs advisor. So the narrative that Trump is pulling the rug from underneath Bibi's feet by moving to cancel aid, and then Bibi is trying to get out ahead of it with "you can't fire me, I quit" preemptive statement, is incorrect, potentially. Many of the Israeli right have wanted an end to aid for a long time. It makes sense. The very fact that we're getting so concerned about, what's happening with the Trump relationship, with the American relationship, what does this mean? Is this good, bad? It signals that there's an overdependence on America. So that's the one point I would take from that. And then the final point that I think is also important to raise is that we really mustn't ever be complacent or base our sense of security on any one person, certainly not another country or anything like that. The tale and story of Jewish history is that throughout so much of our history, we have been alone. And we have to always be vigilant, do what we need to do for our security, whatever that means, to protect our people, and put that first. And also remember where our help ultimately comes. That we have to keep God in the picture and central to the picture. And put our faith and trust in Him, rather than in any man. Blessed is the man who does not put his faith or trust in man, but in God. That must always be at the forefront of our minds.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.